Yes, you read that correct. I recently got to witness a Nikola Tre in person, sit in it, and do a full tour of one of the production units of Nikola's latest truck. Guys, obviously this is a pretty big deal for me as an investor, and I got the chance to do that just about a few weeks ago. And that's probably one of the reasons why I have been so quiet on this channel when it comes to addressing Nikola, because I've been busy, I've been going places, and as a result, I wasn't able to film live videos. But now that wait is over, and in this video, I want to give you guys all the footage and pictures I took of the Nikola Tre with the limited time I had with one of the production units in an undisclosed location. I'm going to share exactly what I noticed, the good, the bad, and also the quality of the vehicle to understand how exactly it compares to a regular internal combustion engine Class 8 semi-truck. But as usual guys, before you get into it, make sure to drop me a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. So first and foremost, before we get into the analysis, I am just going to share one of the video footages I took live on the scene when I first got my hands with one of the Nikola Tres. So let's roll that. So this is the first time I am seeing Nikola trucks in real life. This is a pretty exciting experience. Shipped and ready for delivery to any customers. This unit right here is owned by Wegmans, which is obviously one of the biggest retail and consumer markets in the world, or in the US specifically. Overall, I have to say, seeing these trucks in person for the first time is a pretty surreal experience. They're much bigger than you think they would be as compared to how they are on video. And I do have to say that the fit and finish is quite spectacular on these vehicles. They're nice and clean. A lot of the integration looks pretty useful as well. But it looks like the vehicle overall have been put together very nicely. The fit and finish is quite top notch. Obviously, I haven't driven any one of these yet, haven't sat in any one of these yet, but overall, I'm quite confident that these things will sell like hotcakes, like Nikola has predicted. It's a whole another thing to see these trucks in person, live. Here you can see one of the high voltage distribution modules that Nikola designs themselves. And you can overall see that a lot of the electrical engineering and system integration is done quite neatly and nicely. It's very packaged, it's very uniform, it's easy to see. If somebody wants to do maintenance on these trucks, it might not be that difficult. And these are obviously production units, so this is exactly what it would look like if you were to go buy this truck from a dealer. This is gonna be the first time I've ever gone into a Class 8 truck. As you can see, this vehicle is insanely spacious. The fit and finish, although a little wonky at some places, looks quite nice. Obviously a lot of the wrapping is not on just yet, but you have the display in the middle right there. Although a lot of people have been saying this display is extruding and whatnot, it's actually fully integrated into the chassis. As you can see, we have the joysticks right there and whatnot. Overall, pretty exciting experience, I would say. I know I'm a little bit more excited than I should be, but it's pretty surreal to see your product in person, in my opinion. So this is pretty darn cool. You can see the visibility out there is pretty nice. Not a lot of hindrance there. And overall, the technology is pretty simple to use. There's only a few buttons there. And in my opinion, that's going to add to like the value proposition that the truck is going to provide to its customers. And the simplicity is always going to reduce the cost over the long term and reduce maintenance costs and whatnot as well. And so, yeah, overall, exciting stuff. I would love to drive this vehicle, but obviously I don't have the time to do that today. But regardless, this is a very exciting experience. As you can see, a lot of the work that's been done from Nikola proprietary standpoint is in the system integration. So stuff like these battery distributors in the middle, also a lot of the suspension components and the e-axle. So the e-axle is right there in the middle, and that's kind of where a lot of the power is distributed, from the center axle to the front axle, from the power distributor and whatnot. And so a lot of the people that have been saying that these trucks are basically just rebadged Ivecos have a pretty broken argument, obviously, because Iveco doesn't sell electric trucks, and neither does somebody like Tesla. And so the work that needs to be done to optimize these vehicles is pretty extraordinary. And you can't just throw in a battery pack and electric motor into an existing ICE chassis. You have to actually optimize it and design it in a way
that it can be fitted properly and fit the use case for that truck. And obviously we know that Nikola's truck right now has one of the highest ranges on the US Class 8 BEV list, which is extremely exciting. But obviously for me, the even more exciting opportunity is going to be the fuel cell version, which is going to have tanks right here in the middle. And as you can see, the chassis is kind of already fitted to be able to host those tanks. And then right here in the middle is where we'll have a lot of the compression units. And also these battery packs you see in the middle, which are 9 in total, will be replaced by hydrogen processing units, and obviously some of the sensing and the gas compression systems as well that you typically need with a hydrogen fuel cell powertrain. But yeah, overall I do have to say, seeing these trucks in person is a pretty exciting experience. I hope you guys get the chance to do that as well one day if you're an investor in the company. As somebody who likes to invest in tech, it's a pretty rare occurrence for me to see some of the real products in person, apart from obviously a company like Tesla or Lucid, which develop consumer vehicles. But as for commercial vehicles, this is a very, very exciting experience indeed. But as usual, guys, I'll leave it off for there, at least for this little video recap, and back to the rest of the video.
Now, I do apologize for some of the background noise at the beginning of that second clip, because somebody in a Volvo truck actually pulled up to the Nikola trucks that were sitting in this lot and actually started taking pictures of the truck. They actually asked me if I was the owner of these trucks or the owner of the fleet, and I just told them that no, I'm just a visitor, I'm just checking these vehicles out. And he was actually pretty excited to see these electric trucks, and that's something we need to keep in mind, which is the fact that these trucks catch people's eyes. I know in the consumer and commercial businesses, there's very different strategies that people use to market these products. But it is pretty interesting to note that because of the very unique nature this truck is built on, using that cab-over design inspired by Europe, this truck might sell with a different value proposition to customers. And that is only going to play in the hands of this vehicle, because people will be able to tell this is an electric vehicle. This is not an ICE vehicle, it's an electric vehicle. And as a result, this could become one of those household brands. Now here's an image I took of one of the pumps, or air dryers in this case, or the cartridges in the very back of the Nikola truck. And I just found it quite interesting. As you can see, it says CNH Industrial, which is one of the companies that is investing in Nikola, and is also the parent company of Iveco. And it seems like Iveco is supplying some of the very, very late stage components for Nikola's truck, which again is a good thing, because it's going to allow them to keep costs down and improve their time to market, even though yes, in the short term, it is going to be a little bit more costly than just manufacturing everything in-house on a large scale. But again, this is a startup company, so there are different metrics this company has to use to be able to build these trucks. I also found it quite interesting that they use these plates to cover the batteries. I would have assumed they might want to use something more reflective or something more closed off, but it looks like they have sourced these, and although the fit and finish at the bottom is not the best, it does look like Nikola is able to get these out and able to work for their use case, and they still have some of their stickers on top, which I found interesting, which kind of shows that they might be trying to get these products out on the market as soon as possible instead of worrying about every single little detail on the vehicle, which I don't think is a bad thing. Here's another look of the inside. This is right in the middle of the second axle. Here you can see what seems to me like a suspension linkage component, which essentially might be linking the suspensions of the second and the third axle, which obviously have to be independent and have to be in control with each other when the vehicle is going off a bump or a hill. I'm not quite sure how Class 8 semi-truck chassis and suspensions really work, but that is kind of my guess on what the situation is. If you look right below that, you can see this gray unit right there looks like the E-axle unit, and then this thing right here is that distributor hub that I talked about. This might also be the inverter, I am not sure. The inverter obviously converts the DC current from the battery into AC current that uses the electric motors to power the vehicle, and it looks like these high voltage cables go directly to those induction motors, which is why I thought initially this might be that distributor. And as you can see on the right here, we have some another electrical sensors, or in this case it looks like hydraulic pumps for the air suspension units, which again I have not seen on any other trucks placed on this side, which is interesting. But regardless, overall I really like the neat packaging of a lot of the electrical components on here, which is pretty impressive for a series production unit in such an early stage. But again, it looks like there's a lot of complexities when it comes to building an electric platform, which I think really just goes to show that you can't just strap a bunch of batteries, a motor, or an inverter to an existing ICE chassis. You have to do a lot of optimization, a lot of wiring, and a lot of validation to be able to make sure there's no interference between any of the subsystems. And that, I think, is exactly what Nikola's job is. Here's another picture of the suspension components on the third axle at the very back of the vehicle. I found this kind of interesting. I'm not sure what this unit right here is, but I found it interesting how they're using these little clamps right here to hold this piece in. This might be an air suspension cartridge or a compressing unit or something like that. Not sure how those systems work. But as you can also see, this little chassis that Nikola mounts everything to already has a very well-defined holes for the screws to go into. Now, I'm not a manufacturing expert by any means, but I feel like that should definitely play in the hands of reducing costs for manufacturing in the long term if you just have one simple chassis and you bolt everything onto it, which obviously we saw with the production line that Nikola has in Coolidge, where they have these different stations where people are adding different components to different parts of the chassis. And in this case, Nikola's not hand building the chassis in-house, unlike a lot of other companies. They're actually externally sourcing the chassis and then supplying and taking all the parts in their Coolidge, Arizona facility and putting them together. And so it looks like Nikola has a lot of design engineers that are working with other companies that might be designing this chassis and manufacturing it somewhere else and then bringing it in-house for when the truck needs to be assembled, which again, in some sort of way, should help them with the time to market and build more units in the short term. Here's a shot of the inside of the vehicle. Now, obviously, it's a Class 8 semi-truck, so extremely different from what it would look like for a consumer EV, which is essentially the only EVs I've ever been in. But in this case, I did find it interesting. Everything on the dash is actually extremely simple. I'm not sure how complicated it is in an ICE or a diesel or a natural gas Class 8 semi-truck, but from the images and videos I've seen online, they tend to be pretty complicated. So I like the fact that this is very simple. Everything is digital and everything is simple, which means that there's less stuff that can break, which obviously could lead to downtime and cost your end customers a lot of money. I do have to say that the quality of the plastics inside was not the best. I did see one of these light units at the very top actually was hanging off a little bit because the gap was too big. But again, that's really not Nikola's top priority right now in the short term. It's more important for them to scale production and get these trucks out on the road so customers can get an idea if an EV platform will fit their business use case. And obviously, we've seen so many other companies like Tesla as well struggle with quality control on some of the trucks or their cars, in the short term, because obviously they need to manufacture fast. As you can see overall, I did say the visibility is pretty fantastic because there's no hood at the front. All you see is essentially the entire road right in front of you. You can see 2 feet in front of you from the driver's chair, which again should play very well into the hands of city-based fleets that might be navigating a lot of traffic. It's going to allow drivers to be more comfortable when they're driving these vehicles, which obviously is going to be the number one factor that most people consider when they're looking to buy a truck. Because unlike cars, trucks are used basically every single day of the week, and they have the biggest uptime, and they need to be on the roads for critical use cases, which again means drivers need to be more comfortable in these trucks than their regular consumer EVs. Now, another interesting thing I did want to point out is I did happen to stop by a Freightliner Cascadia that was sitting in the same parking lot. This is, I think, like a 5-year-old production unit or something. But I did want to compare how the chassis of this internal combustion engine truck looks like to the Nikola battery electric. And as you can see overall, this thing is extremely simple. There's a lot of space in this chassis. And apart from obviously the rust and the dust, as you can see right here, this is one of the drive shafts that is coming into this differential. That is, again, controlling the drive shafts right here. As you can see, here is a suspension unit or an air suspension unit in the middle. And then again, it looks like there's another drive shaft that's going to the rear axle and pushing that forward. But I didn't want to show this because it shows you that there's a lot more complexity in an electric powertrain when it comes to a battery powertrain or when it comes to an internal combustion engine powertrain. And so a lot of the people saying that retrofitting an ICE chassis should be the case and should be very easy, well, they're clearly very wrong. Here's a look from the back of that same truck. You can see there's basically nothing here, right? And that's because a lot of it is high energy density. fuel doesn't really need to store in a very large space, and obviously pipes and whatnot don't occupy that much space either. But when you're dealing with high voltage, you need to be able to transfer it appropriately to the right places and also control it effectively for torque vectoring and whatnot as well. And so overall, not only is the weight higher, but the complexity of an electric powertrain is significantly higher. But as usual, guys, let me know down in the comment section below what you guys thought of some of the footage I took of the Nikola Tre. I found it a pretty interesting experience. Overall, I'm pretty excited for how the production for this vehicle is going to look like over the next couple of years. And obviously, we're also going to have the fuel cell version coming out next year, which I really hope I get the chance to tour, because in my opinion, this has an even better market opportunity than the battery version. But as usual, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Take care.